And let's go ahead and start. First, I want to welcome everybody to this morning's Economic Development / Government Relations Committee. We are actually so privileged to have an incredible leader in the Silicon Valley, and at this point, I think probably at a global level too, with all that Russell has done. What I'd love to do maybe is just to give Russell a little bit of a short start here to the sessions. Typically, Russell, we have everybody have a time as well. So if it's okay with everybody, I'll just go ahead and kind of start in and recognize Russell Hancock, our president and CEO for the joint venture Silicon Valley since what 2003 now, Russell, and
Yes.
counting. Yeah,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
yeah. Time seems to fly. I don't know how you actually describe Russell. A civic leader, community gatherer, institutional builder, civic entrepreneur, social scientist, just among many of his great attributes. But if that's just not enough, Russell is also the founder, as we I think all know on the phone, of the annual State of the Valley Conference, which is an incredible town hall that meets once a year. I believe that you probably tip about 2,000 people to spend really a day with Russell and his team, just talking about the Valley's challenges and opportunities. And the conference really features a release of what I would call the Silicon Valley Index. And I believe now, Russell, it's gone from its early stages of local to regional to state to national to probably even global insights on the data analytics that you bring to bear. And then it's a privilege to have you on the phone this morning. Russ has been a close friend of and an advocate not only of the Chamber of Commerce but the city of Morgan Hill for many years. And as he has a chance to provide an overview of the data, he's not only going to provide some what I call significant highlights of his findings, but he's also going to talk about how it relates to us in South County and just kind of stir up a conversation. So with that, Russell, I'm going to hand it over to you. You have the baton and access for any PowerPoints that you may want to speak to as well. And we're going to sit, listen, and learn.
Thank you. Well, that was a lovely and gracious introduction and very generous. So thank you for that. I want you to know that I'm a big fan of Morgan Hill. My wife and I love visiting Morgan Hill. We live in Palo Alto. It's a favorite destination for us. We appreciate everything that you mean to the broader Silicon Valley community and to our ecosystem. I also have a lot of friends in Morgan Hill, including many who are on the screen right now. So I really appreciate these relationships. So my job this morning is to brief you on the state of the region. I'll do my very best. I want to start by telling you that we're entering a period of turbulence, no question about it. There's just intense international competition. There's crazy things going on with the rates. We're getting whipsawed by inflation. And then it's been a topsy-turvy 100 days with a new administration in the White House and constant changes of signals, but it's introduced a bunch of uncertainty and instability. I want to acknowledge up front that all of that is happening. And so in a year's time, I have no idea what we'll look like. There may be significant change coming to our region and indeed the rest of the country. However, and here I need to be perfectly clear, I'm not going to talk about any of that today. Can't do that. Remember, I'm not a futurist. I'm not a person looking into the crystal ball. That's not what's going on. What I can do is tell you what has happened. So I'm going to bring you up to speed on what has happened in Silicon Valley over the past couple of years, but especially over the past year. And I'll bring you up to speed on that. But I just wanted to acknowledge up front, the thing on everybody's minds is what's going on, where we're headed, what the impact of all of those things will be. And my answer is, I don't know. And I'm not in that business of predicting the future. So we'll just have to wait on that. And in a year's time, we'll see where the dust has settled and how it's all sorted out and what our region looks like. Let me tell you what we look like today. This is it. This is what we look like from outer space. And probably the most important thing that we should always remember about Silicon Valley is that there we are. We're on this narrow peninsula, which leads to a narrow valley. And we're surrounded on three sides by water and ringed by mountains, hills, and permanently protected open space. And on top of this, this piece of geography, we have placed the Silicon Valley phenomenon, which is the most prodigious regional economy in the history of the world. And that is not, I'm not being braggadocious, I'm just being clinical. It really is the longest continuous period of growth and expansion and invention, as well as reinvention in the history of the planet. There's never been anything quite like it. Okay, well, let me tell you what happened over the past year. The first thing I want to tell you is what our employment picture looks like. The narrative that you've been hearing in the press is that the region has been socked by new economic conditions, including the layoffs. Here's what we should really understand. That's your jobs picture going all the way back to the turn of the century. So over the past 25 years, we've been a growth economy. You might remember the epic recession in 2008, and we succumbed to that. You can see the dip in the trend line there. But you must always remember that we were the first to emerge from it, and Silicon Valley, with its vitality and innovation, led the nation out of that epic recession. And there you can see we mounted this 9-10 year period of continuous growth in terms of employment. And each year was more impressive than the last. It's actually extraordinary. And all of that was happening. We were powering through all of that, going right into the pandemic, which broke out in 2020. And so you can see in 2020, there comes that dip. But what's amazing about this economy is that even during the pandemic, we had growth years. The pandemic turned out to be really good for Silicon Valley. In fact, it was a period where it turns out we were making all of the goods and the services that the world so badly needed, and it was a bonanza for our companies. And so you can see, even during the pandemic, we were creating jobs and taking advantage of global opportunities, and our region remained highly productive and highly profitable. Okay, so now let me bring you up to the very latest. Over the past 3 years, you can see that we're flatlined. And that's important to understand about us. And I'll leave it to you to decide if a flat line is a good thing or a bad thing. I'll just describe it clinically. We're not growing. We're no longer experiencing boom conditions, but we're not shrinking either. We're just holding place. That's the number of people that are in the workforce as of right now, 1.7 million, and we've been fixed on that for the last 3 years. During the pandemic, with all of that growth opportunity and the world markets, and everybody buying Silicon Valley products and services and using Silicon Valley platforms, the company scaled up. In fact, what they actually did was they overhired. And so we went through a period the last 2 years of what I call recalibrating. They realized that those demand curves were going to be continuous, that the world was recovering from the pandemic and now moving into a different phase where there was actually less demand for what we were doing. And so Silicon Valley companies needed to right size, and they've done that. And that's what's happened over this last 2-year period, and that's been the narrative. That's what we've been reading about most of all when we pick up the newspaper. People talk about the layoffs that are going across the region and the way that the tech sector has been shrinking. I want to put some context behind that, because I think we're probably not understanding it quite correctly. That's the number of layoffs since August of 2022, 66,000 layoffs. That's a big number. I'm not trying to minimize that number. That's a big deal. And in every one of those cases, every one of those data points, it's a massive upheaval. It's disruptive, and of course, those people have gone through a period of pain and adjustment. But that's your number. And anytime you see a raw number, we have to understand that raw number in context. So if you were to understand 66,000 as a percentage of our total workforce, which remember is 1.7 million, well, we're talking about 3.8%. In other words, a marginal percentage. It's not telling the whole story of this economy. It's telling one story, but it's a story that's affecting about 3%, 4% of our workforce. If you look at that number in the context of the tech workforce, bigger number, but it's around 10, 11%. So I think that's also the perspective we should have on what's been going on with this sweep of layoffs. It's nothing like we saw in 2008. It's nothing like we saw in 2000, when the dot-com thing came crashing down. We saw 300,000 layoffs, not 66, but 300,000 layoffs. That really was jarring and dislocating. So we're not experiencing anything like that right now in Silicon Valley. This, by the way, is the unemployment rate. And you can see that during the pandemic, it spiked way up to 16%. That's a very high rate of unemployment. By the way, in the Great Depression, we reached 25%. That's the highest level of unemployment that we've ever experienced in our country. So there's your perspective or your context for that number, but 16% when the pandemic broke out, and then we returned to productivity, and we beat a path to recovery to the point where today we're at 3.5%. That's considered the equivalent of full employment. And so you should understand that Silicon Valley is fully employed. And so you're asking, well, 66,000 people laid off. What happened? This is the amazing thing. They were absorbed. They've been reabsorbed by this economy, which is continuing to be productive and continuing to be resilient. Where were they absorbed? In some cases, believe it or not, by the same company. But they redeployed the talent to another division, like artificial intelligence, where we are seeing growth. In other cases, they're moving to another segment of the economy. Let's say you're in tech. Well, there are a number of places where the people who are talented in tech where they're landing. They are going to fintech, ag tech, health tech, ed tech. All of these places, tech and tech adjacent. And they're also going into the startup environment where there's been robust growth. So you should understand that the Silicon Valley economy is a resilient economy. It's an economy that's been able to absorb 66,000 layoffs without the unemployment rate spiking up. So that's pretty important. You should also understand that during this period of layoffs, is being driven by our tech companies going on an efficiency push. During the go-go early 2000s into the 20-teens, tech was just gangbusters. It was just absolutely amazing, and you know, you've heard about it, you've experienced it. The lavish perks, the bidding wars. Building campuses unto themselves, the grand Palladian architecture going into these new tech campuses. It's all been quite extraordinary. After the pandemic, tech decided to change its tune entirely. They said, now we need to be on an efficiency push, scale back all those programs, scale back all the perks, and running bare bones operations, and not pursuing the same kind of growth strategy. The old strategy was grow, grow, grow. The new strategy is let's be lean, let's be efficient, and let's achieve our profitability that way. And this is a chart that's showing you that it's working. It's working incredibly. Our tech companies are highly profitable, achieving record profits. This is the market cap. That's the value of all the publicly traded companies in Silicon Valley. And look, it shot up to 25 trillion, record breaking. So you're hearing Silicon Valley in turmoil, 66,000 layoffs, recalibrating, resizing, topsy-turvy. But in actuality, this is what we should understand. Highly profitable and resilient economy thus far. We'll see what these external conditions do to us in the coming years, but that's where we stand right now. Now, it's important also to point out that there's been a recovery where the pandemic really does seem to be in the rearview window, but the recovery hasn't been even. There are some sectors that aren't recovering and perhaps maybe will not recover. because the pandemic changed us permanently. We have new patterns, we have new workplace dynamics. And so all those changes represented opportunity for some, and but those same changes represented the elimination of some kinds of jobs and some goods and services. And so that's how we should understand it. This chart shows you how we're doing coming out of the pandemic, and it shows you that we're approaching 10% growth in information and information products, innovation services. It shows you that we're also growing in our community infrastructure. All of that's happening. But then it also shows you that we're losing ground in manufacturing, and then we're losing ground in some of these very specific areas like personal services, retail not growing like it did prior to the pandemic. Transportation is not making a recovery. I think that the travel, tourism, business travel. I mean, business travel is probably not going to recover. That's probably a permanent change. People have found that what we're doing right now, Zooming, is just highly efficient. And so that's probably going to be how we roll here in the future, is that most of our meetings are virtual, and only a few of those meetings are going to be in person. And that means that there are several industries and segments of our economy that might not fully recover. I think a key question to ask it is not only about the jobs themselves, but whether Silicon Valley is losing companies. And you hear this as a concern. The conditions, our housing costs and regulatory pressures and our tax environment might be driving companies out. You hear that a lot. This is the actual fact. Silicon Valley, since the pandemic, has lost four companies. For us at our institute, we don't consider that a big number. In fact, we don't consider that a trend. This, by the way, are the four companies. And what I would point out to you is that even despite their departure, they've relocated their headquarters. All four of these companies left their workforce behind. And not only that, they took out bigger footprints. Tesla has opened up new manufacturing facilities and doubled their footprint in Palo Alto for their administrative functions. Same with Oracle. The same was with HP Enterprise. So I think that's also how we should understand the Valley in terms of the overall trends. But there is something that's important for all of us to understand. Our tech companies are growing. They're multinational companies, and they're experiencing growth, and it's considerable growth. And so as a result of that growth, they add to their workforce, and they do add to their workforce in the Bay Area. That's absolutely true. But they're also adding to their workforce outside the Bay Area in the other 50 states where they're operating, but also on all of the continents where they're operating. And the growth rate outside the Bay Area is actually higher than it is inside the Bay Area. This is our top 20 tech employers over the past 6 years, and their global rate of growth is 66%. Their US rate of growth is 50%, but their growth rate here at home is 27%. Growing, but not growing at the same rate. And as you think about it, that makes sense. We are a very high cost region, and housing is out of reach for all but a few. And so that's probably not your best growth strategy. It's a better strategy to grow in other places as well. And then during the pandemic, we learned that it can all be linked together, networked, that you can have teams that are spread over distributed geographical areas. And that seems to be how we're rolling today in Silicon Valley. So I wanted to make that point. This gives you a little more granularity. This is showing you those same top 20 tech employers and where they're growing. And so you can see they're growing in San Francisco, but they're growing at a higher rate in Austin and adding a lot of people up in Seattle, which is puzzling to me. I'm not sure why that would be. Seattle, also a high-cost region, dealing with many of the challenges that we're dealing with here in the Bay Area. Nevertheless, a lot of growth up there. Okay, so I think a key question as we talk about Silicon Valley is, what's the best way to compare us to these other regions? And this is a chart that's plotting three things simultaneously. This is showing you how our driving industry tech, our tech companies are comparing to other regions around the world. And the size of your bubble is the number of jobs, just the raw number of tech jobs in the economy. The axis along the bottom is showing you the growth, the percentage growth rate. In other words, that raw number, how fast is it growing? And then the vertical axis is telling you what tech is as a share of your total workforce. And by the way, in Silicon Valley, tech is about 25%. It's a 25% share of our total workforce. So where you want to be on this chart is you want to have the biggest bubble possible, and you want to be up and to the right, and that's where we are. That's exactly where we are. And this is how we've understood Silicon Valley for decades, and it continues to be the best way to understand Silicon Valley. Okay, wanted to show you all of that. Now, here's a key question as we think about where the region might be headed and whether these trends are in danger. So again, remember, I'm not looking in the crystal ball, but I can tell you what's happened lately. And here are some things you should understand about our innovation engine. Continues to be hot. We're always looking for those objective things that you can measure to tell you whether Silicon Valley is going to continue to be healthy. Well, one is patents. And look at this. This is a record-breaking year for patents. We've never seen a number like that in Silicon Valley. Here's your venture capital picture. We had a crazy year in 2021, which says so much about us. It's the height of the pandemic. The entire world is hunkered down. And what are we doing in Silicon Valley? We're generating 95 billion in venture capital. It was crazy. And truly that year, with retrospect, there was a lot of FOMO going on, that term, fear of missing out. And so I think it's actually best to throw that year out of the model. And when you do, you can see that what happened last year was, save for 2021, our most robust year in venture capital ever. And don't ever forget, venture capital is a really important indicator. It's a leading indicator. It's going to tell you what people are thinking and what's trending and where they're making bets. So there's your venture capital picture, and it's just extremely robust. 24, by the way, was a doubling in the amount of venture capital that we raised in 2023. And I always like to put raw numbers in context. So the raw number was 70 billion in venture capital generated last year. But understand that's about, it's half of the nation's venture capital, more than half of the nation's. VC dollars generated here, leveraged here. And then it's more than 80% of the state venture capital. A lot of that venture capital is in the form of mega deals, so we should understand that. This is an interesting trend. We're watching it with interest. Venture capitalists used to make smaller deals, and there would be more of them, and they would be spreading those VC dollars thinly over the entire Silicon Valley landscape. Today, most of your mega deals most of the venture capital is in the form of mega deals, and that means technically a deal of 100 million or more. And so here you see that 80% of the venture capital last year was in mega deals, gigantic deals going to pretty well established companies. Here's your startup picture. People are wondering, are we still entrepreneurial? Are we still taking risk? Are people still becoming founders? And those trends are entirely positive. And this is the number of new startups. This is the amount of funding that's going to those startups. It's a pretty robust picture. Here's the employment growth at startups, and overall approaching 10% employment growth. So that's where a lot of the absorption is going on. So again, this is a pretty robust picture. Here's your unicorns. You know what that is? It's a private company. It's not yet public, but it's valued at more than $1 billion. And this chart is showing you that we have the nation's highest share of unicorns, as well as decacorns. tegacorns are $10 billion privately held companies. So it's crazy. Here's the valuations of those unicorns, and it's in the trillions of dollars. So again, it's an extraordinary picture. But I want to talk really quickly about artificial intelligence, because this is, tripping off of everybody's tongue. It's all the rage, what everybody's talking about. And the question is does it represent economic opportunity? Will Silicon Valley continue to command the edge? Will it be the world leader in the same way that it's been the world leader in previous waves of innovation? So if that's your question here as well, I have to show you that all of the indicators are incredibly positive. This is the amount of venture capital funding that's going to AI companies. And in the past year, it was just a staggering amount. In other words, most of that 70 billion in venture funding is going to AI companies or AI adjacent. Here's our share in AI investment nationwide. We're getting, of all the money going into artificial intelligence, 80% of it is in Silicon Valley. That's extraordinary. If you look at the share of funding going to startups, the number of startups themselves, 39% of our startups are AI companies now. So it's just really, by any measure, it looks like Silicon Valley once again has the leg up on this. If this is going to be a thing, Silicon Valley clearly has the edge. This is a map showing you intensity, and we look at intensity in a variety of ways: early adoption, the amount of federal research that's going into the field, the sheer amount of employment. By any of those measures, you can see that Silicon Valley emerges as the world leader. There's these other miscellaneous indicators that again suggest that this is probably going to be an area of strength for us and an area of leadership. Want to highlight, it's not only venture capital going into the artificial intelligence, it's also institutional investing. For example, don't ever forget that many of our major companies are also investors, and they're major investors, and those investments are going into artificial intelligence. Well, I want to say something about our changing workforce dynamics. And here what I'm talking about is working from home. And folks want to know if that's a thing. And I'm here to tell you that it is. It's a thing. We think that this is a permanent shift, that people really like working from home. And the result is that we're seeing a lot of empty space. So remember what I was telling you earlier, our changing patterns have represented opportunities for some, and it's also represented a setback for others. And commercial real estate is an example of that. It does represent a setback. Now, it's not the end of the world. These markets are starting to recover, and employers are starting to entice their employees back to the office. So I think where we're ultimately landing is hybrid models, and that's what we're seeing across the region. Is people are working 2 days at home, maybe they're working 3 days at home. But they're also showing up at the office every week, and that's how we think it's going to sort out. But what it means is that there's more vacancy than we've ever seen. And in Silicon Valley, we're approaching about 20% vacancy. And in San Francisco, it's higher than that. It's about 36% vacancy last time I checked. So that's a real thing for us. Here's the percentage of jobs where we're working from home. At the height of the pandemic, it was around 43%. Today, pandemic behind us, we're more than 30% are working from home. And we should just understand that. And by the way, this compares to other regions. There are more people working from home in Silicon Valley than any other American region. We really have embraced the trend. People prefer it. They like working in their pajamas. That's how we should understand this. And so I think that's going to continue to be a distinguishing feature of our workforce. Okay, I'm doing a quick time check. I just want to make sure I'm not going over my time, and I think I'm okay, right? What I'd like to do is shift from talking about the economy and the major labor trends and the tech trends. And I want to just talk about how people are doing in Silicon Valley. And I'd like to spend the rest of our time that way. And then I'm, of course, very interested in any questions and in the dialogue that we can have together. But let me say a word about the people that are living in Silicon Valley and what it's like to live here and how we're faring. Let's start by telling you that there's 7.5 million people in the whole Bay Area. That's all 9 counties, including Santa Clara County. And so that makes us a major American region. Silicon Valley, the way we define it, is about 3 million of those 7.5. So that's what we're talking about. You might be curious to know that we are no longer a majority population. That's been the case for actually many years. We used to be a white majority population. Now, white or Caucasians make up 30% of our population. So nobody has a 50% majority. Our next largest percentage is Asians, and it's Asians coming from every corner of Asia. And that makes up about 37% of our population, followed next by our Hispanic or Latino community members, and they make up about 25% of the population. And then small slivers of our pie for the other ethnicities, including Black or African American, which is about 4% of our population. So that's what our population pie looks like. But the most striking thing about this is that 41% of our population was born outside of the country. I don't mean outside the region, I mean outside the country, 41%. And then here's the share of our population that speaks a language other than English at home. And that share is 53%. That's the highest in the entire nation, all 50 states. So this is a very distinguishing feature of our region. Immigration is a big topic. So we thought we would develop this chart in Silicon Valley. Don't know what people think, but these are the actual numbers. 52% of our population are naturalized citizens. 30% are permanent residents, lawful, documented. And that leaves 18% of our pie. And that's how many people are in the region without paperwork, undocumented. So that's what we're talking about. In terms of the national dialogue, discussion, the debate, and it's a highly charged situation. Those are the facts for our region. 18%. It pertains to 18% of our population. I told you that we are a diverse population, the most diverse population in the nation, and that we're coming from all the every pocket of the globe is represented here. So that's the thing that we celebrate about Silicon Valley. You may also be interested to know that even though we're highly diverse, we have self-selected to segregate. So if you look at where people are living, we have some interesting findings. This is a map of the Bay Area in 1980. And if you're green on the map, that means that it's a high percentage chance that your neighbor doesn't look like you. It will, in other words, that is a heterogeneous neighborhood. And if you're red on the map, that means it's a high percentage chance that your neighbors look like you. And that's what we looked like in 1980. In 1990, we were trending red. In other words, becoming more homogeneous, not less homogeneous. In 2000, look, green is starting to disappear from the map. And we're becoming more homogeneous. We're choosing to live in places where our neighbors look like us. And by 2010, that's what we looked like. I don't have the chart for 2020 because it's not released yet. We're still waiting on some census numbers there. But that's how we trend in the Bay Area. Now, as we talk about people and how they're faring, I want to talk about housing because it's a basic human need. So let's talk about how we're doing in housing in the Bay Area. Let me start by telling you what you already know. Everybody knows this. We have the nation's highest housing prices. Here's what it looks like in San Mateo County to the north of us. The median home sale price is $2.4 million. That's pretty remarkable. In Santa Clara County, the median is 2.1. So that's $1 million, $2.1 million. And remember, the median means that half the houses sold for more than that, and then half the houses were selling for less than that. That's the highest number that you'll see anywhere across the country, no exceptions. We measure housing a lot of different ways. But what I want to point out here is that no matter how you measure it, it's the highest. We have the highest costs in the entire nation. So here's a measure, which is what we call rental rates for apartments per square foot. So our apartment dwellers are paying the highest rent per square foot in the nation. I see now that this chart is hard to read at the bottom. The national average of rent for per square foot is 1.773, so $1.73. In San Jose metropolitan statistical area, it's $3.32. Huge disparity, just massively above the national averages. Here's how apartment rental rates shake out. The highest, despite what I just told you, the highest apartment rental rates are in New York, followed next by San Francisco and by Silicon Valley. And then it shakes out beneath that: Boston, Washington, D.C., etc. Here's your average monthly apartment rate. We showed you square foot. Now here's your average for a three bedroom, two bath. It's approaching $5,000 in the Bay Area. If you're renting a studio, it's about $2,500 per month in the Bay Area. Here's another measure. We call this the median monthly housing costs. So this is any kind of housing, and we average it out, and we just, there's your monthly housing cost. And there's San Jose at the top of the map, followed closely by San Francisco. And I'll read you the figures if you're having a hard time seeing them. It's $2,400, just rounding, whereas the national average is $1,000, $1,100. So again, it's just extraordinarily expensive, prohibitively expensive to live here. Here's the change in median home sale prices. We thought that with a lot of the population relocating and networking into their Silicon Valley jobs, that would have a dampening effect on home prices. And in actuality, that hasn't been the case. Our home prices have stayed exactly where they are. In fact, they've been increasing. The medians have been increasing clear through the pandemic, and now as we recover from the pandemic. And so in this county right here, the median home prices rose 17% over the last calendar year. And all of these are also showing positive growth in terms of the median price. Here's this is information that we just published in the Mercury News last month. And this is what we're tracking here is how much money you would have to have as your annual salary over a 5-year period in order to qualify for the financing you would need to buy the median priced home. Okay, so that's what this number is. So what we're telling you here is that for a period of 5 years, you would need to earn $370,000 to qualify at the bank for the financing you would need to buy that median priced home, which is 1.3, approaching 1.4 million here on this chart. And that's some quick assumptions. That's a 30-year fixed mortgage, 20% down payment, and importantly, you're not spending more than 30% of your income on housing. So that's what your income would need to be in Silicon Valley. And that number, the 370K, that number has grown by 54% since the pandemic. So that's what I'm trying to explain to you with this chart. Kind of complicated to explain, but let me put it in plain English. It's getting more and more expensive to live here, and we're losing ground. We're not gaining on this. It's in fact, we're falling behind at the rate of about 50%. We're about 50% behind where we were in 2019. Here's what we can tell you about burden. Burden is a technical term. burden means that you're spending more than 30% of your income on your housing, and it's not recommended. If you're spending more, that's considered dangerous. You're living on the edge. Well, here in our region, our renters are burdened. They're severely burdened. They're approaching about half of their income, and our homeowners, the same, approaching 50% on their housing. And so this is a map of the country. And if you're the lighter colors, that means that you have smaller percentages that are burdened. And then if you're the darker colors, that means more than 40% are burdened. And there's California, the most heavily burdened state in the entire country. Here's another thing we track. Can you qualify for financing to buy that medium priced home? The percentage of people who can do it. In other words, the percentage that are making that number I showed you, 370,000, the percentage is 26%. So a quarter of first-time home buyers can actually pull it off. Three-quarters can't do it. They can't pull that off. You probably are expert on this subject, but this is showing you how we're doing against the state assessments. Those are called the Regional Housing Need Assessment. That's an acronym that we pronounce RHNA. So you probably know this. The state comes and it issues quotas to every city, including Morgan Hill. Morgan Hill has a quota of housing units that they are mandated to approve. And it was the last reporting period. So there was a period of time, 2015 to 2023, and all of these quotas came down from the state. And the question is, did we meet them? Well, in the very low income housing category, we didn't. We only approved 32%. We only achieved 32% of the state's goal or the state's mandate. For low income housing, we only achieved 43%. For moderate income housing, we got 60% of that done. And then there was the above moderate income housing, in other words, luxury housing. And look at that, we just blew past the state's targets. So what we're doing in Silicon Valley is we're building luxury housing, and we're doing a great job of that, but we are not building or not permitting and therefore not building the housing that would be affordable to most of the people who live here. So no surprise, there's homelessness. And I want to draw the direct linkage. I want to say this is a causal linkage. We have homelessness because we don't have enough housing. There are also other factors that drive it, but homelessness is a reality in our region. In Silicon Valley, the way we define it, there's 12,000 people who are unhoused. There's a narrative out there that people are homeless because they're making bad choices, because they are in a cycle of addiction, and mental health is also understood to be very high on that list. Those things are true. Those are factors that are driving the homelessness in our region. But I want to be clear, this is not, this data here isn't precise. It's not 100% reliable. This is data that comes from questionnaires and surveys that are implemented in a way that will never be fully scientific. But in the most recent samples, this is what we're learning. Actually, the largest cause of homelessness is people are unemployed. They lost a job, then followed by alcohol or drug use. But then these other things, evictions, fleeing a bad relationship, fleeing an abusive relationship. Those are the things that are mostly driving homelessness in our region. So we should understand that. Let me tell you about our income and wealth in Silicon Valley. Let me tell you a few things about that. These are the average annual earnings in our region. And as you can see, it's more than $200,000 now. That's the average. Now, remember, there's problems with averages. People in Silicon Valley are highly paid. I mean, we have some very high earners in the tech sector, some very high flyers. And so those averages are always going to be high in our region. Nevertheless, I just wanted you to see this, that the US average is about 80,000. That's the average annual earnings in the United States. And here's Silicon Valley, about twice that, actually approaching 3 times that. It's extraordinary. In Silicon Valley, we have 154 billionaires today, but we also have 145,000 millionaires. And that is not counting the value of the house. That is $145,000 who have access to $1 million in liquid wealth. So this is extraordinary. You won't see anything like this across the entire region. There are many ways to measure wealth and inequality, income inequality and wealth inequality. The most popular, well-known, is what we call the Gini coefficient. And that's a measure where we say, if you were 100 on the scale, that would mean that one person is holding all of the wealth. Then, if by the same token, if you were 0 on the scale, that would mean that all of the people are holding all of the wealth equally. And in Silicon Valley, by the way, we calculated what 0 on the Gini coefficient would look like in Silicon Valley. Guess what it looks like? Every household in Silicon Valley would have $1 million. That's what that would look like. Well, the US is 55 on the Gini scale. And here's Silicon Valley. I want to tell you this story this way. In 1990, we were 35 on the Gini. 30 years later, we are approaching 80. In fact, we cracked 80. We're above 80. That's an extraordinary tale. If you were a developmental economist, or if you were a person studying societal evolution, including societal revolution, and then you would say, well, those are all of the conditions necessary for instability and revolt, blood in the streets. That's what people would say. And that's what Silicon Valley has come to look like as a result of the extraordinary things that are happening here. So households in the top 10% today hold 71% of the wealth. Correspondingly, households that are in the bottom half, the bottom 50% of our society, are holding merely 1% of the wealth. So we understand we have the nation's highest, most pronounced wealth and income gaps. Here's another important chart. Probably hard to read, so let me really explain it to you. This is showing you the percentiles. So this is this blue bar is people in the 90th percentile, and people in the 90th percentile have experienced a 30% growth in their salary over the last 20 years. People in the 80th percentile have experienced a 28% growth in their wages over the past 20 years, and so forth. Now here I have the 10th percentile, the bottom 10%, and that segment haven't experienced growth. In fact, contrary, they have experienced losses. Their wages have stagnated, -3%. If you're in the 20th percentile, your wages have not grown. You have seen no wage growth over the past 20 years. So this is happening in Silicon Valley, and we need to understand the region in that way. Fully 30% of our households, that's this number right here, are not self-sufficient. They require some form of assistance in order to get by. And that assistance is coming from friends or family, or from church communities, or from a government program. 30% of households. Our children, 37% of our children are living in households that are not self-sufficient. So this is also really important to understand. As a result, we're seeing an important social shift, also an important political shift in our region. And that is to tell you that this famously blue place is actually starting to turn purple, and people are less aware of this. And so I wanted to actually just put this up on the board in a way that's pretty stark. This is showing you the election results for the 2024 election, the national election, in which our nation chose to send Mr. Trump back to the White House. Now, the narrative about Silicon Valley is that we're blue. I mean, just incredibly blue. The nation's largest collection of blue voters. But in actuality, every Bay Area city increased their support for Mr. Trump. The president grew his support 43% between his first election in 2016 and his second election in 2024. In the Bay Area, I'm telling you, 43%. His support was higher in 2024 in all but 2 Bay Area cities. And you can see where we're charting the growth. And by the way, where he experienced the highest percentage growth, that corresponds directly to income. So in our high median income cities like Atherton, for example, or Hillsborough, he had less, he grew his support less in those cities, but he grew his support. I want to be clear about that. His support grew in Atherton, grew in Hillsborough, et cetera. But his support grew the most in our lower median income cities, and that, that probably makes sense. Finally, this is very striking. The Democratic candidate, Kamala Harris, is a child of our region. Don't forget, grew up in Berkeley, came from California, came from the Bay Area, and yet she lost ground in her home territory. She received 20% fewer votes in her home county, in Alameda County, than she received in the 2020 election when she was also on the ballot as the vice president. So this is a very, very striking change in our region that some people have yet to grasp. And so I wanted to put that up for our consideration as well. Okay, I'm going to stop there because I'd love to be able to field your questions. I just want to make sure you know that all of the information I've shared with you today is not proprietary. It belongs to you. It belongs to the region. And we make it all available at this website, SiliconValleyIndicators.org. You can go to that website and you can pull up troves of data, hundreds upon hundreds of indicators, and you can get right to their data sources. You can slice them yourself. You can do your own amalgamations. It's all right there, and it's free. We want the entire community to make full use of it. And then, if you're interested in the index that we publish once a year, you can have a hard copy of that from Amazon, or you can just go to our website, which is jointventure.org, and you can download your own PDF of the index. And here on the website, you can also sign up for our mailing list. And if you're not on that list, I hope you will add your name and your email. And that way we can invite you to the annual State of the Valley Conference and other informative events that we convene on a regular basis. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm looking forward to comments and questions.
First, I want to thank Russ for an incredible presentation. And again, I would encourage everybody to go onto the website, sign up as a subscriber, so you can stay consistent with all the wonderful work that is done, and as well as download the report. The data analytics is absolutely incredible. It's humbling, it's sobering, it's all the above. It really takes some time to go ahead and align those data analytics to either your personal business or specifically Morgan Hill. So I would encourage everyone to do both. But again, Russell, thank you for the time. You do an amazing job of work with everything you do, but summarizing all of this wonderful index in less than 40 minutes is an incredible feat in and itself. So thank you for that.
Thanks.
But let's open it up. I know we're going to run over time here, but we've got several hands up. Alex, I think you were the first hand. We'll go to Alex, we'll go to Marby, we'll go to John McKay, and then we'll go to Kathy in that order.
Thank you. Russell, it's always a pleasure to listen to you. You always fill my brain to overflowing whenever you talk, and I appreciate it so much. I know everyone here does. You on one of your charts, you show that one of the areas that we've lost a lot of and that may not recover was manufacturing.
Yep.
And I guess, yes, we've always been an innovative area, but manufacturing has always been a factor. Mm-hmm. That said, and I'll kindly say with the kerfuffle that's happening out of DC,
yep,
and the aim of that kerfuffle allegedly is to bring all that manufacturing back.
Yeah.
Do you see any reality from that?
I don't see it. I don't, it's not based in any economic theory, or it's not based in any economist understanding of how these things work. So I think it'll make the situation worse, not better. And I think most importantly, it will invite retaliation. The retaliation will then breed instability, and people don't invest in facilities, plants, in unstable environments. It just doesn't happen. So I think this has no chance of success, but that's opinion.
Yeah, no, that's what I wanted to hear. Thank you very much.
You bet. Let's see.
Marby, go ahead, Marby.
Oh,
Hmm.
I'm sorry. I didn't know I was going to be next. I thought John was. Excuse me. So it was interesting, Russell, to see where the top tech centers were moving according to that corresponds in a great deal to what we're seeing with where residential moves are going. The question I had is two areas we're seeing or people move to in the past probably 5 to 10 years are Tennessee and Idaho. Are we seeing any tech move there, or just people moving there, still working remotely for companies that are in some of these areas you talked about?
I don't. I haven't heard any buzz on Tennessee, but there's plenty with Idaho, especially around Boise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Huge concentrations there, and Boise is a wonderful town, and
Yeah.
people discovered that. Yep, for sure.
Great. I'd be interested to hear if any tech is moving to
Mhm.
Tennessee, because that's where we're seeing so many people going in just like the past 5 years. Thank you so much for the presentation. It was great.
Sure.
All
Are
right,
we
let's
going
go with
to John?
go to John McKay, Kathy, and then John Horner.
Well, like everyone else, thank you, Russell. It's always so enlightening,
Mm.
sometimes frightening,
Yep.
but it's we need it all, right? We need to know what the conditions of where we live. I asked this question probably a year or two ago, and that is that we lost Silicon Valley Bank, which was one of the largest funders in the innovation sector.
Mhm.
Who has stepped in to fill that void? And because it looks like we're still out there generating tons of money for startups, plenty of venture capital money.
Yep.
But is that money coming from within the state? Are we retaining that position of capital for all the funding and everything? And is it based here? Silicon Valley
Yep.
Bank
Yep.
started here. It
Yep.
understood the valley. Is there anybody else filling that space?
I don't. It was the large institutional players that moved in to fill that space, and so it's the nationals that are doing it. It's Chase, it's J.P. Morgan, it's Merrill Lynch, it's Bank of America. That's who moved in. It spelled opportunity for those institutions. There is still room for a new entrant to come in and do what SVB was doing, which is niche banking catered to startups. And I suspect we'll see that. We'll see a player, but for the time being, it's been the large institutions.
Okay, so banks like Bridge and all that, they really haven't filled that void.
Nope.
All right.
Nope. Not happening.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kathy, you're up.
Okay, I have kind of a three-pronged question. The first is that you talked about employment and unemployment, but you didn't talk about the fact that some employees just give up.
Yep.
And that's kind of related to my question about high schools and our young people. As a person who was actually born and raised here in San Jose, I've seen this evolution where we don't just have the highly successful stories, and we have that economic gap getting bigger and bigger. And you use the words revolution and instability. But the fact is, we have currently a huge problem in our schools, not just because of the potential cuts in funding, both at the K through 12 and college area, but in the students that don't see a way to move up because they don't see people who look like them succeeding. So how is this being addressed? Because it's a real issue, and Supervisor Arenas just asked for a report to give us the status on the Latino community and how unfunded and underserved they are. Because you're still going to have service people. The service industry is still important. We still have some farm workers that are providing food here. So how do you see the relationship so that it's not just manufacturing, it's not just the workforce that earns $200,000 or $300,000 a year. These communities, these workers are, if they're lucky, they're earning 50,000. So we can't just close our eyes and ignore them. How are we dealing with them?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All I want to say by way of response is to agree with everything that you just said. The premise of the question is maybe the premier issue facing our region, but also the nation. It's what it is, frankly, what this election was about. And I think that's what's fueling some of these results that I was showing you in the final slides. What we do about it, that's boy, that is it's a really hard question. Now, on the in terms of the educational indicators, we have a host of those. I'll refer you to the dashboard where you can look them up yourselves. But we lost ground over the pandemic. We're not making up that ground. Absenteeism, chronic. I guess it's chronic. I'm trying to remember the term for it. I think it's absenteeism from high school on the increase. We lost ground on test scores. So there's a lot to do here, but we also have to work on the narrative itself, which is the old narrative was there's one path, and if you follow that one path, the success will come. People are saying no, actually. That's only a path for some. It's not a path for all, and the wealth and the opportunity are not widely shared. So now we become a region, a nation of haves and have-nots, and those gaps are widening. So I don't have the solutions for you. If the solutions were clear and easy, we would have implemented them already. But it is the premier question of our time. So thank you for that, Kathy.
All right, I think we'll wind up with John Horner. I know you got a question or two, John.
I'll first add my thanks. Thank you, Russell. You and the team there always provide such absolutely essential insight into what's going on throughout our community, and I love the balanced way. And sad to see the Gini coefficient thing hasn't been sorted yet.
No.
That's long. But I'm kind of building on, it's probably no mistake since Kathy's a trustee at Gavilan College and I'm in our local school district, I think about the educational part a lot. And it become, I wonder how familiar you are with the work the Silicon Valley Education Foundation is doing around there. I put the link in the chat, the zip code red, and just the simple fact that we also have redlining in our schools. Schools like East San Jose, Morgan Hill, Gilroy, we have roughly half the funding per student of Los Altos and Palo Alto. And yet we're serving students that, through no fault of their own, they're harder to serve. Right. They have more needs. They don't come from college as often from college educated, high income, Tesla driving families. They're people talk about family engagement. And like for a lot of our families, engagement is, hey, I got them here. That's what I can do. So I don't know if in the work at Joint Venture, if you're looking specifically at that issue as an underlying issue, or that more in others, or if you have any comment on it.
I don't have a comment. Again, I just want to agree with the premise of your question. These things are real and they're systemic. We will ignore them at our peril.
Amen.
Russ, I want to thank you again, and I know we spent a little bit of time over our 9 o'clock hour here, but so thank you for one. An incredible presentation. I would encourage everybody to go ahead and download the report and go ahead and subscribe to the service itself. It will take some time because it's the variables and the attributes that are in play are complicated. So the best way to do that is to kind of soak in this report and take a look at really what it means to us here, specifically in Morgan Hill, more importantly, the region, as well as then obviously the national level. So thank you again, Russ, for all that you do. I want to also thank the group on the call this morning. It was very informative, it was very relevant, and it was very sobering at the same time. So we'll look forward to next year's report. I'm sure there potentially could be some major changes in that report. So we'll look forward to your work. And thank you again for supporting the Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce and the city of Morgan Hill, Russ.
My pleasure. Thank you. I'm honored by your invitation. I look forward to joining you again. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, guys.